Hi, and welcome back to the series of videos on how Proclus's theory of time and its place in the history of ideas can help us understand errors in the history of ideas. And I'm talking about the error that Olavo de Carvalho makes in his idea that prior to Cusanus, no one directed their nous, their faculty for intellectual insight, to nature. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what he says about Aristotle. So he compares the new science, the new use of our intellectual faculties, which directs them towards nature and then searches for something certain in nature, something mathematical in nature, with what he says is the Aristotelian alternative, which is to recognize that the natural world is a world of indetermination and infinity, where you can never have the kind of mathematical certitude that you have in geometry, for instance. Now, this is a very odd thing from the perspective of the history of philosophy, because it gets Aristotle's position in the history of ideas all wrong. Because Aristotle is reacting against Plato and his Timaeus, which is his dialogue on the creation of the world. Now, the Timaeus clearly sets out that there is one domain, which is the domain of true being, about which we can have true knowledge and certainty. And there's another domain, which is the perceptible world, about which we can only tell a likely story. So where the criteria for our discourse can't be the criteria of certainty that we have for mathematics, but they have to be somewhat looser criteria, this criterion of likelihood. And there's lots of debate in the literature about what this likelihood is and how to gauge it. But it's certainly the Platonic view that you can't have strict science about the natural world. And it's against this Platonic view that Aristotle sets up his own project of doing a scientific physics that starts out from definitions and then can demonstrate natural truths from their causes. This is the Aristotelian view that there is true science about nature, against the Platonic view. And in particular, it's central for the Aristotelian view that the world is perpetual. It's because the world is perpetual and that there are things that are true always, that you can have things that are true necessarily. In particular, you can have things in nature that happen cyclically. And about these things, we can know that they happen necessarily, right? If something happens necessarily for Aristotle, it happens always. And if this takes place in the domain of nature, it's going to be some kind of cyclical phenomenon. He argues for this in Generation and Corruption. And so that's the Aristotelian view. Now, part of Aristotle's philosophy of nature points beyond it, right? It's the theory that the many cyclical events happening on the Earth and in the atmosphere, in the sublunar world, they depend on the uniform motion of the heavens, and specifically the replacement of species, right? The fact that there are always new animals, that there are always new plants of the same species. What guarantees this continuity is the continuous motion of the heavens. And this continuous motion of the heavens can only be explained by reference to a first unmoved mover. Right? And that is actually nous, and it's actually the best object for our nous, for our faculty of intellectual insight, is to apprehend this self-thinking thought, this self-intuiting intuition. Right? Aristotle appears then to say that ultimately nous has to point beyond the natural world, to this pure thought. What we're going to see in the next video is that, according to Proclus, this pure thought is time. This video is part of a series on Proclus's philosophy of time. If you're curious to learn more, I will be teaching a course on Proclus's philosophy of time called Time and the Gods, coming up November and December. It will take place Sunday afternoons, and you can find a link below to enroll in the course. Thanks.